everybody, and welcome back to KSP 101. Going to be picking back up where we left off last time, where we left new station in orbit around Duna. Here in episode 12, we are going to begin creating the vessel that we are going to use for our Duna+Ike mission. The mission itself being that we are planning to land on Duna and then return to orbit of Duna, docking with this station that we have in place now, and then transferring over there to Ike, landing there, deploying the breaking ground science, and then coming home. So, now that we are here, back where we left off, we are in the perfect space actually to do this. We need to correct the inclination of our orbit here by aiming at the anti-normal target reticle on our nav ball and try to lower that inclination down. If I'm not mistaken, it'll be a nice simple burn to 180. Try to keep it centered there so it doesn't mess with our periapsis and apoapsis too much. Looks relatively level now, but not enough. We're going to time warp to the apoapsis while staying on anti-normal. Hopefully we will keep communication with our relay network that we have going on here, but we may not. It does have a direct connection back to the KSC, which is good. But for now, let's zoom out and try to make those lines of this orbit flush so we can keep an eye on it as we burn back to 180 again. Let's increase our thrust, our throttle. And once we get that 180, I'm just going to go ahead and lock it there. Okay, good. Now that looks like a nice level 90-degree inclination orbit around Duna. Let's check our periaps and our apoaps. Pretty close to being nice and level and even, so let's go ahead and save, and then we're going to head back to the Kerbal Space Center and begin creating the vessel that we're going to be using to land on Duna, returning to orbit with, and then transferring and landing on Ike, and then coming back home with. Get some tunes going here. There we go. I believe I should have enough time to record at least one episode this evening, maybe a couple, we'll find out. For now, we're only a few minutes in, still have plenty of time to go, unless something changes. We have 281 science. I do want to go back and check our tech tree here, because there may be something I want to go ahead and unlock if we can. Remember there being something last time that I don't rightly recall. But, ah yes, the probe core. We would like to have a better core, especially that one. But, alas, we do not have the science to do so. And we don't really need these cores necessarily. That's really the core that we're after. It'd be a lot nicer to have it, or even this one, but we need a bit more science to get there, so let's go ahead and move on. Now let's check our missions just in case. Flyby Miss Duna+Ike and the Mun. Well, we're not going to do that. Looks like... okay, so our mission has changed a little bit. When to land on Ike, plant a flag on Ike. It has nothing to do with returning from Ike just yet, though, so after we complete that one, we may get the one to plant a flag on Duna. Hopefully we do, but either way, we are going to be trying to get either the Duna ejecta or the Duna stone, or both, if we can pull it off, as well as deploying the breaking ground science so we can get that one. Let's go ahead and grab this one for Ike and any other ones that pertain to Ike, as well as the build a new orbital station around Duna. We'll take that as well. Let's see, let's grab that. Depending on what the prerequisites are, though, it says it has to support at least 10 Kerbals. where we're sending a 3 Kerbal command pod on top of the vessel that we're using to land on both Duna and Ike. That's not going to be enough for that, so we're not going to take that. Otherwise, I'm not seeing anything else that we might want to take. Alright, let's go ahead, do a quick save, just in case. You never know when anything is going to happen in this game. Let's head to our VAB and begin constructing this vessel. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a good little bit, you'll have seen that I've shared a few landings with Duna and Ike, out of all the many that I've done. Some of them are pretty complex vehicles, some of them aren't. I'm going to be going with an over-engineered vessel for this one, much like I have in the past. That way, just in case anything happens, for any of you that are viewing this and using it as a tutorial, it'll be over. I can still make do, just in case. Now let's go to our craft list here. We have the M1 and the M2. Neither one of those, M2A, M2B. Alright, we are, okay, I was looking at the wrong ones. We have the D series for Duna. Let's take a look at our last Duna vessel. That was primarily just for flying by both Duna and Ike, making quick orbits of both and then returning. So it shouldn't be anything too special or anything like what we're trying to create this time. And it most likely won't be based on this too much either. It's definitely not going to. Let's go ahead and select new craft so we can build one from scratch. It's going to take a little bit, where it's going to be a pretty complex vehicle compared to any of the other ones that we have made. We're going to call this the D2. I want to make sure there's not supposed to be a hyphen or anything in between that. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and whip out our Mark 1-3 command pod. And we'll set it to auto strut heaviest. And the first thing that we're going to do is whip out this Clampatron docking port, stick it up top, and then auto strut it to grandparent port, and then head on down to our utilities. Now, we are going to want some lights on this vessel, but not quite sure where exactly we're going to want them just yet. I know that we will want some up here at the top. That way, once we are docking with our station at some point, we'll be able to see what we're doing. We want to move those into the vessel, maybe move it up one space, move it in again. Looking good. Okay. Because it's a Duna series, I like to make it match the planet on its light color. So I'm going to bring the blue down and then the green down some until it looks kind of brick reddish like that. We'll go ahead and turn those back off. And let's see what else we're going to need. Now for this, like in the probe video, we still didn't even have enough parachutes in that one to land without too much of an assist from the engine. It still landed though, it was okay, but we want to make sure that we're not going to have that problem with this vessel. So, let's go ahead and grab these drogue chutes. We'll put, say, 2 here. Radial 2 there, and then radial 2 here. Auto strut both of those to grandparent part. It's going to be a relatively basic command pod, similar to what we have been making, but it is going to have a few new additions. Setting that there, radial 2, setting it to grandparent. Sure, it's not too close to the light because we want it to be able to deploy still. Let's go ahead and check our staging and make sure that those are opening after the drogues. We don't really care about the windows in this. The windows aren't much of a priority, where we are going to be taking up a lot of the space on this command pod this time. And this time we're also going to be adding these cargo storage units. But we're going to set those to radial 4, and we're going to put those about, let's try here. Let's auto strut those. And then we'll grab the move tool and bring them in as close as possible until they disappear a little bit, and then bring them back out. We need to make sure that is not obstructing our command pod's hatch, and it doesn't look like it is, so I think we'll be okay. Let's go ahead and open this one. We are going to need, we're going to set this one for what our engineer is going to be grabbing. We're going to start with the control station. We'll place it here. Then it's going to need a Communitron ground unit, but only one, since it's not too far away, Duna+Ike. And we have a relay system there now too. And lastly, a photovoltaic panel set there. And basically we're going to do the same thing on the back side. Let's grab another control station, another Communitron, and another photovoltaic panels, or another set of photovoltaic panels. Now that should be enough to power those two, and maybe even one more. And one of these is going to be for Duna, the other one's going to be for Ike. Now, we need to hop into the other one over here and put our science in. We're going to start with a GUEB monitor. We're also going to put a, I believe the weather analyzer, but let's make sure. Let's expand that. Requires an atmosphere. Okay, so that's the one we're going to be using for Duna. Let's place it in there, as well as another photovoltaic panel to power both of those. As long as our engineer sets that, it should be able to power both of those. Now we do not have the ionosphere science, so in this one, which we should be using for Ike, we're going to place the GUEB monitor here. We're also going to place the, oh, not the control station, we're going to place the Grand Slam passive seismometer, which we may not even use, to be honest, but we'll see. And then another photovoltaic panel. Actually, let's go ahead and get rid of that seismometer. You don't have to, you can keep it in there if you want to, but I'm choosing to. That way I can have another backup photovoltaic panel just in case there's not enough power for either mission. The not the photovoltaic panel, but the passive seismometer requires you to slam something into the ground near where you place it to get a reading, to be able to get science from that, which oftentimes won't happen unless you send a probe to crash near it, or if you decouple a stage above it high enough to where it's going to land and crash near it. So I typically don't really use that, to be honest, so that's just the way I'm going to set this vessel up. And we should have all of these full of all the modules that we need to deploy. Now let's move on. Don't think there's, actually yes, we are going to need to add more chutes for this, but before we do, actually no, let's go ahead and do it now. Let's place 4 radial 4, these larger ones here, like so. Auto strut those to grandparent part, and let's move those in one, and hopefully, no, looking rough. Okay, we'll just leave those like that. Let's grab more drogue chutes. We'll add radial 2, or no, radial 4. We'll put 2 here, or I mean 4 here, and 4 there, and we'll take a look. Looking good. Let's make sure to auto strut all those to grandparent part. Hopefully that's not too many, but with Duna I'm not sure you can have too many, because it barely has an atmosphere. Alright, let's move on from there to our science. Let's grab, let's see, we're only going to be using the thermometer, seismic accelerator, and the barometer for a radial 3 set. Let's figure out where we're going to put that. Let's try by starting with the thermometer by placing it up here, radial 3, and see what that's going to look like for the others. We should be able to still access those like this, so we'll get back here. We'll place the seismometer. Let's see, we need to make sure that we're placing these where they need to be correctly. Let's go back, set that to radial 3, go over here to where this one is. We'll grab it and set it to radial 1. And then go to our menu, rotate over here, and place the barometer there. And then lastly, we'll grab the seismic accelerator and place it on the back side, which we will worry about using once we land on Duna+Ike. Okay, for now that takes care of that. We'll just go ahead and place it right over top of the window here. We'll set it to radial 2. It's not entirely necessary to take 2, where we are going to have a scientist that will be able to restore it once we use it, but for the sake of symmetry, so the vessel is nice and balanced, we will put it on radial 2. Don't want to push it up too high into the parachute just in case those choose not to deploy. And speaking of chutes, we need to make sure to drag our drogue chutes down to where they need to be, and make sure that our larger chutes are together. Very good. Let's save our progress. That should take care of all the science that we're going to be taking with us. We are not planning on using a probe core, nor are we planning on transmitting any of the science, so we won't worry about adding any communications to this vessel. But we do have to worry about the power. Let's grab... shouldn't need a whole lot of power, especially since we're not really transmitting anything either. So let's go ahead and just grab one of these. We'll set it to radial 4, try to place it in between that parachute and the mystery goo, and then we will just move to the move tool and move these into the command pod. And then let's grab our photovoltaic panels, place them here at radial 2, and that will take care of our power needs. Make sure to set those to grandparent part. And then we'll finish this off with a 2.5 meter heat shield placed under there, set to grandparent part. Let's check our weight out. This thing is weighing 6.3 tons. It's pretty massive just for a command pod. But like I said, it's going to be loaded down. Now we won't worry about a nose cone, where we are going to put this in a fairing. Maybe. We might have to put a nose cone on, but we'll see. For now, let's move on. Let's go ahead and put a TD25 decoupler right under that, and make sure it's staged properly. Looking good. Alright. And then we need to add some RCS thrusters onto our command pod, which we will put about here at radial 4. And then we also need to put some RCS tanks into this, but we're not going to need a whole lot. We'll just grab one of these, and we'll take it back here and set it to about, yeah, we'll go with radial 4, just in case, and we'll auto-strut that to grandparent part, and then move that into the command pod till the hatch is no longer obstructed, and it's nice and inside of the command pod. Let's save our progress there. That should basically be everything we need for the command pod. Now we'll begin to build the rest of our stages, and we'll start off by putting one of the larger reaction control wheels here set to heaviest part, and move on to our fuel tanks. We'll go down to our Rockomax tanks. Let's grab one of these X216s, place it there, auto strut that to grandparent part, and then grab one of the X200s, place it here, and auto strut that to grandparent part. And we'll stick a poodle on the bottom there. And what's our mass going to look like? 22.5. That should be plenty. Make sure to set that to root part. And then it'll be time to break out the decouplers. Now here's the tricky thing. We need to make sure... See, this is primarily going to be the stage used for returning to Kerbin. So we need enough to get this thing to Duna without using what we're about to put on it. That way you can use it to hopefully not have to use any of the fuel to land. Hopefully we'll have enough parachutes for that. But we'll need to build the outer stages that will be asparagus staged to be able to take off from Duna, reach that station, refuel those 4 outer tanks, and then use them to head to Ike, land on Ike, reorbit Ike, and begin the transfer home using the central stage. So what we're going to do is take this, set it about here, halfway up the tank, and then set it to radial 4. Now I said it was going to be asparagus stage, didn't I? So let's actually go back and change that to radial 2. We won't move the mouse, we'll go back, grab another one, move it over here, and set it to radial 2 on the opposite end. Then we'll make sure to set those to grandparent part. And then we're going to have to do some math. We're going to be grabbing some tanks and attaching a swivel engine to them. So let's check out our tanks, see what we had to work with. So that's 45 ton, or 4.5 tons, so a swivel will definitely be able to still move that mass, especially on Duna. Let's go ahead and place radial 2 on that decoupler there, and do the same thing on the other ones. Let's go up and make sure those look good. Looking good. Set those to grandparent part. Set the other ones to grandparent part. And then on the tops of these, we're going to put some reaction control wheels set to heaviest part. And then on top of those, we're going to be putting some parachutes on. Whoops, heaviest part, there we go. Let's go to our utility menu and grab the only larger parachute that we have available, placing those on top of those fuel tanks, setting those to grandparent part. Then we're going to have to break out some more parachutes. Now we're wanting to leave this central area of the central tank nice and clean so we can put some ladders on both ends. In fact, let's go ahead and do that now so we don't forget. Let's go right under our command pod here. We'll place it right under the heat shield so it's not technically a part of the heat shield. And then we'll go up and place it close to the heat shield but still not on the heat shield. About lined up with that one there. Okay, let's grab another set. Make sure the bottom is connecting to that. And we'll grab one more. And we'll line it up to about here. That should be good, but we'll find out. We'll do a dry run testing this out. And also make sure it's set to radial 2. That way they're on the back end so you can come up here and reach this in case you can't on Duna. And then we will continue to add more ladders, making sure that our top one is flush with the bottom one of the last that we placed. It's a bit of a safety measure, just in case, because I've had issues with Kerbals being able to climb these ladders. You can also just hold square or X, I believe, on the Xbox, and just hit X on the PS4 or A on the Xbox to copy it, which I'm going to start doing now, just to get this over with a little faster. And just keep copying and pasting that, or just placing straight out of the utility menu, either way, whichever you prefer, until you reach close to the bottom. And all the while making sure to save your progress in case anything happens. Never know when your power is going to go out, or the game will freeze up, get blue screen, PlayStation going out. Any of those terrible situations could happen. Now that we are close to the bottom, we'll copy it one last time. And then we will grab one of these mobility enhancers and try to place it as close to the bottom of this as possible, if we can. There we go. And we want to make sure those will actually touch the ground. Kind of wishing... looks like we might need it to be a little longer than that, so let's go on ahead and grab that. And let's remove a couple of these before we do this. Grabbing the larger Kellis LV Bay Mobility Enhancer ladder. We'll just go ahead and stick it at the bottom and then extend the ladder. And we'll keep it extended. Let's go to our landing legs. These are the best ones we have, so we're going to have to work with them. Let's see, this is the first space, so 1, 2, looks like that's not going to be preferable. Yeah, it's going into the fuel tank, so let's just move it over one space. We'll put one as close to the bottom of that fuel tank as possible, radial 2. And we won't move our mouse cursor, we'll just go back to this menu, grab another set, rotate over and place them there. That way they're nice and even. And we're going to do the same thing over here, which honestly we should have kept the mouse where it was to do that, so now we're going to have to go back and do that again with these. Find the bottom, rotate over, and we'll copy that, rotate over, and we'll place it one over, and copy, move one over this way, place it there, looking good. And then we will have to place some landing legs on these. It's close to being nice and level with the landing legs that we have on the central tank as possible. Try to go about maybe here, but then we're going to move them over 1, 2, and we'll place, copy, move over 1, 2, place, copy. Do the same thing to each one just by rotating and copying. 1, 2, copy, 1, 2, go over here, looking good. Okay, that should be all the landing legs that we're going to need for this. They are a little lower, but I think it'll be okay. Now let's check the ladder. Looks like it extends pretty far down, but we also have a problem. We could potentially lose that poodle engine. So let's go to our move tool. We're going to move each of these landing legs down one space and in one, like so. Down one, in one. We should have to do this a couple more times for the outer tanks and a couple more for the inner tanks, like so. That should be it after this one. That's a little better. Let's retract those and make sure that they are shielded. And if you enable deploy shielding, that allows you to open the landing legs even in circumstances like behind fairings where they wouldn't be able to deploy, which is very useful, especially if you move them into tanks like I did just now. But again, we are going to test this vessel before we move on after we finish creating the primary vessel that we're going to be using for these missions, which is what we're doing right now. Let's just go ahead and retract this last one, set it to deploy shielded, and then we will grab our ladder and move it up to where the top of it here is flush with the last step on the manual ladders, and we'll close it. Looking good. Go to the other side, do the same thing. And we just got a little bit left to finish up this vessel. See, those are the larger chutes. We also want to make sure those are going off with the larger chutes of the command pod. So we'll place those up there with those. Alright. And now we need to put the rest of our parachutes on this. Let's go down to our utility menu. We'll start off with the larger ones. We'll place those centered on the outer side, about here. Click in, rotate over, place it in the same spot over here. Click in, and we'll move over 2 spaces, copy it, move over 2 spaces, copy it, go over to this side, move over 2 spaces, copy it, move over 2 spaces, and that should be enough of those. Now we need to place some in the central stage. If I'm not mistaken, we should be able to move them in without it hurting anything, so let's go ahead and place 2 here. We'll copy it, place 2 there, and we'll copy it, move over to the other side, placing 2 there. And it may be a little tricky to place 2 over on this side, so we might have to just move it. Thank you for that. I'm trying to make sure to translate this as well as possible for anyone playing on the Xbox as well. I'm hoping it's been helpful. Alright, let's go ahead and place those there and check this side. Okay, so we're going to have to do the same thing on the other side. Let's place these as close to the same on the other side. To do that, actually, we can find the center of this parachute and put our mouse right over top of it and then rotate over. Should be fairly close. We'll take a look. See, the top of that parachute is in line with the top of the... Okay, so it needs to go up a little higher to where that's almost in line with the top of the reaction control wheel, just a hair above it. That way it's nice and even with the other ones. And we'll place one copied here and here, and then we'll copy another just one more time, moving it to this side. That is fantastic news. I'm very glad to hear that, and that's the primary reason why I decided to do this series. So I'm all the grandparent apart now. You should only have to do it on this side. Not have to worry about the opposite side. Let's go to these now and do the same thing. And we're going to have a lot of parachutes to move on our staging. Need to check this message real fast. 10 or 10:30. Alright, so it looks like I actually will have enough time to make 2, possibly 3 videos this evening. But let's continue. Making sure that these are set to grandparent part, and then go to the opposite side and set these to grandparent part. And now all of those should be set to grandparent part. We just need to check the staging. It may be easier just to take these and move them down here. With all of the other larger chutes. And after doing so, we will take that poodle engine out of that stage and placing it in its own stage down here. So let's add a new stage at the bottom, go up here, grab that poodle engine, take it down here. That's a much easier way to get all those larger take care of. We still have all these to move into that stage, so let's do that. And what I'm doing to ungroup those, or regroup those, is just tapping them with X or A on the Xbox twice once I move them, like so. And it doesn't matter which one, you can do one or the other. It'll still regroup them into one icon. After we get all those regrouped and restaged, let's go back and make sure our drogues are alone in their own stage. Let's get rid of that one. Now it's time to place the drogue chutes that we're going to be using on the outer tanks. And that is why we kind of left some spacing here. Well, it looks like we didn't space them enough, but that's okay. We'll take the drogue chutes and then set them to radial 2. It's already good to go. We'll place those there. We'll place another set. Just need a couple sets on the side. Just place those there. It should be okay. We'll place these here. And we'll grab this just to make it more even with those. We'll copy it. Do the same thing on this side. Looking good. Copy those, move them over. Oh, okay, they're spaced over just a little more, so let's grab those, move them over one more space, and let's make sure to set those to grandparent. Just got 3 more to go now. It's gonna take almost the entirety of this episode just to build this vessel, but once you have it built, it'll be worth having. We need to find out where those drogue chutes are so we can move those to stage with the other drogue chutes. Let's go up here and see if they're up here. No, they are not. They might be down in this stage somewhere. Let's take a look. Till we spot those highlighting. Are they down here? Ah, they are. Okay. So to fix that, let's just take this Poodle engine, remove it from there, and we'll just drag this up here to the very top. Like so. It looks like we have our decoupler in the wrong spot now too, so let's grab that. And we'll place it right below all those parachutes. Go back up here. And the top drogue chutes, there are less of those to move. Let's just go ahead and grab those and move them into this other drogue chute stage. Looking good. That'll be fine. There we go. Now let's save our progress. We're already up to 153 parts. I hope that this is not hurting your system. I apologize in advance if it is. Let's go ahead and put those swivels on now. Let's take the swivel, put them on our outer tank set to root part. And then after we place those, we'll have an idea of where we need to realign the tanks by going to the move tool and grabbing the decouplers, making sure those are set to grandparent part. We're going to move it up, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 should be good. We'll move it up 4 there. We'll grab this decoupler, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Alright. Now let's go over this and make absolutely sure. We still need to asparagus stage and strut these. So let's go to our fuel tanks and grab the fuel lines. And it doesn't matter which ones go first, the way that they're placed. So let's do these, move it over 3 spaces, set these about here. And then we will go to these. Okay, so it does actually matter. We don't want these to be in the way of the ladder. So these tanks going in, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And then these other tanks here, let's move that in a few spaces like the other one. Place it, find that line, and move it right on top of it there. And put the fuel lines connecting those there. Now we need to make sure that our staging for the outer tanks is correct before moving on. We do also want to put that poodle down here below those swivels. Let's get rid of that stage. I don't know why it didn't get rid of itself automatically. Alright, so it's looking like we need to make sure these two are going first. Very good. And then these two are going after that. Very good. Let's save our vessel and make sure. Right, we need to strut this up now. So let's go up here to our parachutes, but we're not going to stick them directly on the parachutes. Stick them right below the parachutes on the reaction wheel. Even better, let's actually just put them on the command pod. We'll put 4 here, connecting them down to the reaction control wheel. As close to just centered on it as possible, like so. So it'll be a lot easier to do it that way instead of doing 2 by 2. But it will add more weight to the central stage where the struts are originating from instead of the outer stages, but that's okay. We can handle it. We'll put 4 by placing it between those chutes there and finding the center of that stage on the outside and placing it as close to the center as possible, like so. And we'll go down to the bottom and do the same thing, finding the center of the central stage, strutting those to the center of the outer stage, as close to the center of it as possible, like so. And then we just need to strut these stages together. Now is the fun part. We need to make sure it's not going to get in the way of our Kerbals descending down the ladder. We place them about there at the center of that square. It should be okay. That gives us a nice easy place to find to strut to the other tank, and then we'll do the same thing on these tanks, and then we'll just move down to the bottom much like we did on the inner side of the tanks and strut them from the bottom. nice and in line with the other struts that we put on the sides of the tanks, like so. Just got one more set of struts to put now, like so. And then I believe the lander is going to be finished. But let's double check. It's looking good. Let's save our progress. And then we will make sure that that's all we're going to need for this lander. Don't need any robotic parts, no more decoupling. I do not believe we have a large enough fairing for this, so we are going to have to put a nose cone on it. Let's go ahead and select this nose cone. But if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's going to be a little rough on the docking port, so let's just grab this one. It weighs less anyways. We'll place it at the top of the docking port, radial 1, grandparent part, strutting, make it a nice solid white. And that should be good. We just need to enable the staging on the docking port and find out where that is so we can drag it down. There it is. Make sure to put it in its own stage and then drag it down below all of these stages. Now this is technically where it's going to be once we make the rocket that's taking this to Duna, but for now where we're testing this, let's move it up above all of these engines so we can ditch it in the test once we reach a certain point. And we are going to want some basic fins as well. Let's turn our aerodynamic overlay on with our center of mass overlay and thrust overlay, and we'll just put those right down here on this fuel tank. We need to set it to radial 2, copy it, rotate over to this fuel tank and set it in the same spot, and then set that to grandparent part as well as the other ones. Alright, that's looking good. Let's save our craft. We may want to go ahead and place 2 more on the outer side of this central stage. We don't want to do that on this side because it'll affect our ladder and our ability to use the ladder. That should be fine. Okay, I believe that's all we're going to need. Let's go ahead and test this thing. And before we do, while we're on the menu here selecting our kerbals, which you use the left or right shoulder buttons to cycle through, it'll also lead you to the action group menu, but we'll get to that. Let's get all these kerbals out of here and make sure it's just Valentina in there. We'll save, and then we will test our vessel. The first test will be a nice little hop over towards the 180 side on our nav ball to test our landing on land. And then we're going to hop back up and go towards the 90-degree side and eject all of our stages and land in the water. And where we don't have an engineer, we can't do both tests at once, because we're going to have an engineer not only to deploy the braking ground science modules, but we're also going to need the engineer to repack the central stage chutes. Not the outer stages. They won't be important. We won't have those once we make it home. But we will have to repack all these drogue chutes and larger chutes in our central stage for coming back home with the engineer. Now first, this may destroy our launch pad, it may not, but let's hold the left shoulder button, L1 on the PS4, and hit square or X on the Xbox and deploy our landing gear and see what happens. Hope it doesn't destroy the pad. Okay, it's not too heavy, that's good. And on Duna, those other landing legs should come in handy, but I guess we'll find out. Looks like we do need to raise those swivel stages just a little more. Let's go ahead and extend one of these ladders, make sure it touches the ground. Let's close the UI so we can get a good view. Oh yeah, it's definitely going to clear the ground. Let's EVA our pilot here. Make sure she can go all the way down these ladder. Now about this point, you're going to want to be a little more cautious in how you move your Kerbal, because if not, they have a risk of still going down at an angle and letting go. But otherwise, it's looking nice and smooth. Let's let go, move over here, move back over, and grab it, and reascend our vessel, hop in, and give it a test flight. Let's make sure she gets up there nice and easily. See, that's what I was talking about. So once you reach about that point, you want to slowly start climbing up the ladder and then hop in. Alright, we are in. Let's retract that ladder now. And for now, I'm going to test it landing on land. So I'm going to regroup all these decouplers into one stage so I can move them more efficiently, because I want them to be over top of... Actually, we're not going to get rid of that nose cone until we are done taking back off from Duna. But, or we might have to get rid of it before we dock up to refuel if we need to, but for now, put all those together, put them up here above all these parachutes, and let's test this thing. Let's go back down here so we can check our staging. Looking good, looking good, looking good. Alright, now in case anything goes bad in this, we can always revert, which we are planning to anyways, but I'm going to quick save. And then, let's activate our SAS, throttle down at first, activate our engines, throttling up nice and slow. Once we start moving, let's get rid of that landing gear. Once I'm about halfway through the first asparagus staging liquid fuel tanks on the outer side, I'm going to start rotating towards 270, nice and slow, so we don't lose control of the vessel. That Poodle's not really operating at full capacity here on Kerbin, but it's still going to operate pretty well on Duna. There's not much atmosphere. And once those first two outer stages kick off, I'm going to cut the engine, activate RCS, and try to point retrograde if it will let me, or at least close to retrograde. Okay, so not retrograde. I'm going to point at the 90-degree mark this way. Now, once retrograde hits that mark, then I'll lock onto it and activate the chutes. Here in 3, 2, 1, 0, lock, and then activate those parachutes. There go our drogues. We need to actually move those drogues to where they go off before the larger ones once we get back to the BAB. Need to remember to do that. Let's activate our landing gear as well. Now the drogues slowed us down significantly. That's good. Just remember, we're landing on Duna, the more parachutes the better. It's not going to be the same as what we're seeing here. We want this to be as close to like 5 or 4 meters per second or less once they're fully deployed. That'll be a good sign for landing on Duna. And we may still have to use the engines a little bit on Duna to help assist slowing down. So it's about 6 meters per second. It's not bad. I think it might translate to about 10 to 15 meters per second on Duna, but I think it'll be okay. Looks like we have to move some of the parachutes on the outer stages too. The larger stage, or the larger parachutes, are not spaced properly on all of them, so we'll have to check that. But for now, we have enough information from this. We do need to check the structural integrity of the landing gear though, so let's go ahead and time warp and land this down on the surface. Let's zoom out a little bit and reactivate our time warp. It's not showing it, but it can still be affected and controlled with the UI closed. And once it gets close to the surface, I'm going to hit square or X on the Xbox to cut the time warp where we still have control of it. Just make sure you do, or it won't work. And we are getting very close. I'm going to go ahead and cut it now, and then deactivate my SAS and turn it back on. Nice and smooth. Alright, that's not bad, even at an angle, on Kerbin, so it will definitely be fine on Duna. Alright, so I need to remember to move the outer landing gear down and the parachutes as well. Not thinking there's anything else I'm going to have to take care of at that point besides making sure the nose cone is not staged until we're in space and we place it where we need to, depending on if we need to dock up or if we can just go ahead and land without docking first. But we'll find out. For now, let's revert our game back to launch. We're going to do a full test to see if we can push this thing into the atmosphere and try to land into the ocean on our way back down to the surface. After we're done with all the tests, we'll make the necessary adjustments in the VAB, save. I'll take a very, very quick break and then come back for episode 2 of this evening, which will be, I guess, episode 13 of the series. And we will build the vessel required to take this to Duna, get it there, and figure out if we're going to land on Duna first or Ike first. Alright, let's do a full test. Let's take this nose cone and place it up here, right before we decouple the central stage. Let's quick save like last time. Activate our SAS, go full throttle, and kick the tires and light the fires. We're going to try to see if this can at least get somewhat close to making orbit. If it can, we'll be pretty solid. It doesn't necessarily have to make orbit on Kerbin to be able to do it on Duna, but if it can get close, then we'll definitely be ready to go to Duna, which, as far as I know, it should be able to get pretty close. The way that I've made this lander for going to Duna in the past. Let's rotate, do our roll here, so it's pointing towards 135 at the top, since those tanks are not placed to be level where they should be. Let's start going towards that 90-degree mark, very slowly, making sure to hit 80 first at about 250. It's not going to be a real accurate launch. It's not necessary. Now the Poodle might have a hard time here in a moment, but again, we're going to be on Duna. It's not going to matter. I believe it's going to be okay. Let's cut those outer stages. See how the Poodle's going to do from here. See, I wish we had the Mun pad unlocked. It'd be a much easier test in a way. Launching from Duna is kind of in between what it takes to make orbit from Kerbin as well as what it takes to make orbit from the Mun, where there's such a lack of gravity on Duna. Let's go ahead and rotate back and see just how much delta V this thing has. It's got quite a bit for being in the lower atmosphere still, but it's looking good. As long as we keep that prograde right on top of that 90-degree mark, trying not to let it go too far down from there. I'm going to raise this up to the 80 mark and then try to lock the prograde there before losing control of the vessel. There we go. Let's see if it can maintain itself. It's still raising. Still plenty of fuel. This not at all how it's going to go on Duna. Just saying. But for all intents and purposes, this test is actually going pretty well in Kerbin's atmosphere for a vessel that is not really supposed to be able to make orbit around Kerbin. Now that it's reaching the upper atmosphere, it's going to be able to pick up a lot more speed a lot faster. There it goes. Let's take a look at our apoapsis. See where it's at, what it's looking like. So this will almost be able to reach space and start curving around a little bit. Nowhere near enough speed to be able to orbit Kerbin, but yeah, I think it's going to be pretty solid for Duna. Let's open up our resource menu. Still all kinds of fuel there. We're definitely going to be able to reach space in a vessel that honestly I don't think should be able to from Kerbin. But let's go ahead and start rotating towards the 90-degree angle now that we're close to 500 meters per second. And we'll lock on at a 90-degree inclination. Check that apoapsis out. Got about 500 meters per second of delta V left. It's going to take about 40 seconds to burn. This is interesting. It's a pretty good test so far. Once that hits about 70,000 meters, I'm going to cut it off. Actually, about 80,000. I'll cut it off if it can reach 80,000. We'll find out here in about 7 seconds or so. Okay, it's going to run out first. Alright, so let's get rid of that nose cone. Goodbye, nose cone. Stage. Point retrograde. Set it to surface. And time to do some time warp. And I am not going to break out into song and dance about let's do the time warp or anything. I don't want to embarrass myself that much. Let's try to reorient our vessel a little bit here. Even on time warp, it's very easily done. Let's go back to where we can control our time warp. Do a little bit of re-entry burning. Hello, Moon. Good to see you. Always photobombing. We should start to feel a little bit of G-force here any moment now that we're dipping into the upper atmosphere. There it comes. And once we get through that burn, let's deactivate the time warp. And let's move these larger parachutes up here. We don't want to activate those first. Activate the drones. Reactivate our time warp. Let's cancel out of that, activate our RCS, go back into it. Wait for those to fully deploy. In 3, 2, 1. And then we will cancel our time warp after we squish our Kerbal from all that G-force. As soon as it loads back up. Hope it doesn't crash. If it does, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Let's activate our other chutes, and we'll reactivate our time warp. That's almost enough speed slowed down from the drogues. That's good. I hope it works that good on Duna. Alright, let's finish our time warp down, land. Looking good. It's about the same amount of speed that we were descending with the entire vessel. We might still have to use some of the engine propulsion to assist the landing on Duna. I certainly hope not, but we'll find out once we get there. But it should be okay. And this should splash down okay as well, so we'll just cancel, revert back to the launch pad, and then from there we'll revert back to the VAB and make our corrections before saving and taking a quick break and returning to build the rest of the vessel and taking it to Duna or Ike. We'll see which one we're going to do first. The thing about that is I already put the station in orbit of Duna, and instead of it being around Ike, and I don't want to waste the fuel on that stage to get it to Ike, because then there's not going to be a whole lot of fuel to refuel with. So what we might end up having to do is take this straight to Ike, do its mission there. We'll use that as a test base to see how well it does, and if it does well enough, we'll leave Ike and try to keep all of our fuel tanks and staging, making it to the station to refuel, and then land it on Duna and use what we have from there to get back to Kerbin, hopefully. And hopefully there will still be some fuel in the station left over from before landing on Duna to make orbit and rendezvous back up with it to refuel before we head home. But really, all we're worried about is that central stage there for making it back home, so I think we should be okay. Now, we need to move these parachutes over one space. So let's grab those, move them over once, rotate and move it over once. I think those are fine now. Just also need to make sure that this is over top of these. Should be okay there, I guess. And we need to also make sure that all these are above the drogue chutes. Let's grab the drogue stage, move it down below this stage. Now that's properly placed. Everything else should be fine. Except the landing gear on these. Let's move those down. Actually, we're going to move those down twice. On these outer tanks, as well as these outer tanks. And after we move those down twice, we're going to grab the decouplers and move them up once on both outer stages, and make sure that our struts didn't get affected too badly from that. I think we had some struts disappear. That or they just weren't there. Nope, they just weren't there. Okay, so let's grab these struts, go back to our place tool, and last time we accidentally placed these to radial 2, I believe, so let's fix that by placing them on radial 4 there, finding the center point on that stage, making it nice and centered on that and placing it there. Now we should have 4 struts going to the outer stages instead of 2. Looking good. Those decouplers are still looking good. The struts down here still did the same thing on the bottom, so let's do the same thing to fix it. Place those there, radial 4, find the center point on the bottom, make it as nice and centered on that as possible. Place, and now our bottom is strutted properly as well. Looking good. I believe we have our lander. I think so. Feeling pretty good about it. Let's save it. And I do want to make absolutely certain that all of these are just drogues. Very good. So all of these should just be the larger tanks. Very good. Make sure that our central stage decoupler is there. Make sure that those are good. Very good. That's there. These are all together there. Alright, we are looking fantastic. So there is our D2 landing craft. Those are still a little higher than those other landing legs, aren't they? At the risk of stability for landing, I'm going to move those down one last time. I'm not going to move them any lower than that. It'll be a little dangerous if we do. But we still have all 8 of those. So now let's update that save. And I'm going to cut it off there for now. Actually, before I do, I'm going to make sure of something. I'm going to go down here to our TD25 decoupler, place it here, and make sure it doesn't cut into our landing gear. I think it should be okay. Set that to auto strut. Close that window out, and then I'll save again. Still got to do one more thing. Okay, let's take that, put it in its own state. Oh wait, no, we don't have to do that. We can put it down here under the poodle. Very good. Okay, let's get rid of that now. Now we can save. And I will be right back here shortly after a quick break so we can build the insane launch vessel that's going to take all 54.3 tons here that we have off the surface of Kerbin into Kerbin orbit and transferred to Duna, and hopefully going straight to Ike. I don't know, we might have to launch another station core before we do that, because we're going to have to be able to dock and transfer Kerbals between two vessels around Duna and Ike. So I don't know, we might find out how much fuel it's going to take that station core to move to Ike. If it takes too much, we might have to launch another one around Duna. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we shall return shortly to take care of all that. Thank you for watching. Hope this is helping. Hope you've enjoyed. And I will be back shortly. Goodbye.